This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
The All Progressives Congress, the APC, is expected to hold a new primary election in Edo State today to determine the party's flag bearer in the state's governorship elections in September. Today's exercise is coming after the party declared the initial primary election last Saturday as not completed. The decision to hold a new exercise was taken by the APC's National Working Committee after the first exercise produced three different candidates as winners of the vote. Dennis Idaosa, Anamero Dekeri and Monday Okpewolo, all serving lawmakers, were announced as winners by various groups associated with the APC. For more on this, we are joined by Tony Abolo, journalist and public affairs analyst in Edo State. Mr. Abolo, good morning and thank you for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Let's start with your reactions to the recent reports about the APC conducting fresh primaries in Edo State today.
Well, we were just wondering how they will resolve the impasse where you have three, and actually you could even almost say five. We keep talking about three, the Anamero Dekeri, the Husa Okpewolo. But there was, even Clement Agbajo said it's not all over. Then there was, I think, a lady who also was claiming victory. So we're wondering whether it was going to be possible to resolve this thing so quickly. But again, they're running against time. INEC's timetable means they must run it off as quickly as possible. And that's why there's a rush of primaries in the Edo State this week and maybe possibly the next weekend, and it's all over. So I'm glad that they quickly came to their senses to know that what they were all trying to project was not going to work. And
Mr. Abolo, if I may, the change of Governor Uzodinma as chairman of the committee to Governor Otu, I mean, that's an indictment in some ways on Governor Uzodinma.
Absolutely.
But do you, from your observations, do you think that this change will avoid all the controversies that trailed Saturday?
Like maybe I said it on your show, but I will tell you what, I get personally worried that we are unable to rein in on people's ambition in this country when it comes to politics. Everybody has ambition anywhere in the world when it comes to political, seeking for political office. So you must hope that we can have a better way. And that's where leadership of any political party matters. And in structural understanding of the management and governance, you know that politics is one of the most sophisticated and one of the most difficult organizations to manage. And therefore, you need a strong leadership. And we like to believe that before they are coming, Otu, the governor of Cross River State, is now the chairman. And they have tried to remove the fact that in this new arrangement, they will not have a returning officer, which means Otu is going to be the one to declare. And I like to believe that they will be properly secured by the police, and that will not have the situation where we had the commissioner of police going into a venue. I like to believe he went for his job, and then the hold of folks came after him. And again, they will be able to clear off the folks that went into APC secretariat and sacked the SWC from the place, which is not necessarily a good thing. So I like to believe that they will have talked to everybody involved that we cannot afford a disaster again. Otherwise, they will not have a candidate.
Mr. Abolo, there's been the prominent mention of Oshomole in all of these conversations. He says that according to his conversations with President Tinubu, there is no zoning in deciding the APC's governorship candidate. Is this the case, and what are your reactions to this?
Okay, if he says that's what they are saying, but is this what is on the ground? What is the mood on the ground? Whether you like it or not, the temperament of Edo State now is that power should shift to Edo Central. So when you come in and say, "Oh, you don't do that," although I had an interview with on my radio show, had an interview with Izeyamu, in which he said, "Well, when you're in opposition, you don't talk about zoning. You better leave it and let the best emerge." Well, nobody tells you the parameters for the best. So I like to believe that if you took the sentiment, it means that you are likely to get the benefit of the electorate to buy into whoever you bring out. And that is what I think will be a winning formula. But when you come into this business of, call it back-to-back, supposing it became Dennis again, people will now say, "Oh, how can you and go to Dennis. People might react to that. Or how do you go to a donor when we've just finished Adam to somebody? So I think it's not necessarily a good thing. I think they should rather listen, because this business of dictation, somebody who's up in the hierarchy of political party want to tell you what they want, but not what the people want.
Right.
And in our politics in Nigeria, we've never been looking at the electorate very, very keenly, because that is what is going to make this time to practice democracy. That's the only thing that will turn it around and it begins to work. For now, we're still in the apparatchiks of political parties. It's time now to turn it to the electorate. And that's my feeling. That's my mood. And that's my report on what is going on.
Mr. Abolo, thank you very much for speaking with us this morning. Our guest on the conversation is Tony Abolo, a journalist and public affairs analyst in Edo State, speaking to us on the APC's decision to hold primary elections today in the state to decide on the party's governorship candidate for the September governorship elections. Do stay with us as the conversation continues on Now Breakfast.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Reports say the federal government has blocked access to trading platforms such as global cryptocurrency giant Binance. Though there has been no official announcement from the government, users confirmed limitations in their ability to access the site and perform regular functions in what is seen as attempts to stabilize the FX market in the country. Earlier, Binance had announced that it was working with the Nigerian government to deal with transactions on its platforms that are non-compliant with local regulations. To get a better sense of this and why it's important, we're joined by Nathaniel Luz, tech entrepreneur and author of Yaba Nobi Silicon Valley. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Luz.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Let's start with your reaction to this latest development.
Okay, it's quite unfortunate on the part of the government, right? What we are dealing with, seeing the naira falling against the dollar, one of the things driving that is a lack of trust. People do not really trust that the government can do what they say. People are losing trust in the economy. That's why more people are moving their funds to the dollars. So now carry out actions like, we ban Binance, we do this, we do that. You're just worsening the situation. Because this is a situation of trust. If people don't trust, it's like a relationship. If I don't trust you, you cannot force me to trust you, right? And doing any actions of trying to show power or trying to show that you can oppress or do things is just going to worsen the situation, which is what we're seeing right now.
Mr. Luz, is the government getting any sort of results? Because following the announcement, we've seen dips in offers that were made on Binance itself.
It depends on what we call results. Do we want quick gains or do we want something that is sustaining? The previous CBN governor went against Abuki FX. The guys had to stop publishing rates. He accused them of being the reason. How do you accuse just a news platform of being the reason why the naira was falling? Since then till now, we've seen the naira that it has kept on falling, right? In the previous government, we saw them go against feedback. We saw them ban crypto. All of these playbooks, this whole thing has been done before, right? Crypto was banned just a couple of years ago. We didn't see results. Right, because you are not addressing the situation. The buying or selling of crypto on Binance has nothing to do with the state of the Nigerian economy. Like, it's two different things, right? We have an issue of excess naira in circulation. We have an issue of Nigeria has some Eurobond payments coming up, right? And traders are worried that will Nigeria be able to make up the payments after the payments will affect the value of the naira. Do you understand? We have an issue of the fact that our economy is heavily reliant on imports versus exports. We have the issue of people that are jacking, selling off their assets and grabbing all their naira and converting to foreign currencies. We have major economic issues. To leave all of this and say there's one or two people that are buying and selling crypto on Binance, it's amazing. Sincerely, it's amazing.
There's an argument that's been made that Binance should be restricted or shouldn't even be allowed to operate because we already have other platforms where people can trade. We still have issues with BDCs, for instance, and there are speculations or assertions on how the existence of BDCs are an aberration of sorts. Do you agree with this argument? Or if you have a counter argument, what is it?
You see, individuals would always trade, right? There's nothing we can do. Crypto was banned in Nigeria for a couple of years. Did that stop trade on Binance? Did that stop trade on other places? Twitter was banned also. in Nigeria, did that stop people from using Twitter? Right? To assume that you wake up and say we ban this and people will stop using it is not possible. Even if the government goes ahead and bans Binance, what is just going to happen is they're going to worsen the situation, because at least on Binance, you can see people trading, you can see the volume they're trading. If the government bans Binance, all of that, those trading will keep on happening, but it will just be happening on the ground where you cannot see, where you cannot measure, where you cannot track. One challenge Nigeria is having is that we're not having enough dollar flows. But guess what? We're actually having a whole lot of dollar remittance flows, but our problem is we cannot really account for them because they don't pass through the traditional channels. So most people doing remittances don't want to pass through the traditional channels because they've lost faith in the government. So they pass to other channels. We can't account for them. We can't record them. Here's what I'm saying. There is no version of reality where the government thinks it can stop crypto trading. It has done it before. This crypto trading stopped. Twitter was banned. If Nigerians stop using Twitter. So those are the questions we should be looking at.
I mean, technically, can we say that this is a stopping of crypto trading and not a... I mean, it seems to be more focused on the trade between Naira and the dollar and other currencies and not so much crypto itself.
I mean, I think the government is giving mixed signals. Just a couple of weeks ago, the SEC and CBN released regulation and said, okay, if you want to be licensed to trade crypto, both USDT, that's the dollar variation of crypto, to Naira, any form of crypto, just get this license. Application fee is 30 million naira. You need to have a paid up capital of 500 million naira. And startups like my own startup, we were daring to get some of these things. But today you're saying you ban Binance. So first off, everybody's confused. What exactly do you want? We think the government should pick a struggle and stick to it. If you want to ban crypto, if you think you can and you want to, fine. If you want to legalize, you can't be asking us to pay for a license and at the same time you're threatening us to ban. And the license isn't cheap. I mean, to have 530M plus other fees, attached is not something cheap. So it's time we hear from the government that what really do they want.
Mr. Laws, thank you very much for speaking with us this morning. Our guest on the conversation, Nathaniel Laws, is a tech entrepreneur and author of Yaba Nobi Silicon Valley. He joined us to speak on the recent ban by the federal government, the blocking of access by the federal government of Nigeria to trading platforms such as a cryptocurrency platform Binance.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Still on the conversation this morning, the federal government has transferred the operations of the Zungeru hydroelectric power plant to Penstock Limited, the concessionaire chosen last year to take over the plant. Vice President Kashim Shettima, who announced the transference, says the move is expected to boost the country's power generation capacity and contribute significantly to meeting energy demands. Now, reports say Penstock Limited fulfilled its obligation by paying 50% of the commencement fee on the 5th of January, and the official handover was done on the 23rd of January. This morning, we take a deeper look at what this handover means for the power sector. Our guest is Nnadozie Nwoha, the managing consultant at EMRC. Mr. Nwoha, what is your reaction to this particular report?
Hi, good morning. So I think it's a step in the right direction. However, I'm a bit unclear as to when we would start to reap the benefits, because a key issue in the power sector today is being able to unlock stranded capacity. And what I mean by this is we have about over 13,000 megawatts of installed capacity, but on average, we're only able to get about 4,000 megawatts to consumers, because the transmission claims to have a simulated transmission capacity of 7,500 megawatts. So bringing online another 700 megawatts, which is the capacity of Zungeru, I'm not too sure if TCN would be able to transmit that power at this time, or if that would mean, stepping down some power plants. But on the brighter side, when you look at it, most times what also happens with power plants is they typically would have gas issues and are unable to generate supply. But with Zungeru, during at least the peak periods where they stored water and all of that for being able to generate, we would not have those sort of issues where we're having gas constraints that don't let us generate as much. But my greatest concern is really, how do we transmit this power at this time, looking at our transmission capacity today?
And I guess, I mean, just from what you're saying, it's obvious that this is not something that we're going to see immediately. We know that the federal government has the various projects underway that should see some sort of development in our transmission capacity. But when we come specifically to Zungeru itself, if there is no capacity for TCN to transmit this power, then what exactly are the benefits from this handover to the concessionaire?
So, I mean, first off, hydro is it's a significantly cheaper power source. So that would, on one level, help drive down the market invoice that has continued to balloon in the power sector. Secondly, what may just likely happen is some power plants may get stepped down. So I don't have full visibility of what the power purchase agreement is on Zungeru. But typically in Nigeria, what happens is the hydropower plants get dispatched first. So what this means is because they're the cheapest power source, we try to max them out in terms of generation. So if we have, say, about 20 generation plants online, the hydro guys typically get dispatched first. So they ask to, ramp up as much as possible because one, it's cheaper and kind of like easier to get out there. So the only thing that we may see happening is we may see some other power plants getting stepped down. So some lesser reliable power plants who keep having gas constraints. So that's the only sort of immediate benefit that we would likely see from Zungeru. So yes, but in terms of the TCN's capacity, I mean, we on average do 4,500 from TCN. But the highest we've ever done was about over 5,000 megawatts, about 5,100 sometime in February 2021. So I think if we can even get back to that capacity and maintain some sort of steady state at that point, then we will see the benefits. And it's been achieved before, so hopefully it's not something that's too far off in the future. But those are the sort of like short-term benefits I could see. So power plants get stepped down to accommodate Zungeru, being that it's a cheaper and more reliable plant. So I think that's the short-term benefit that I see coming out of this today.
Well, Mr. Ngoha, sometimes in these conversations, when we talk short-term, long-term, it doesn't exactly give us a timeline. And I'm concerned about timelines at this point because is there going to be an interruption in the sort of power that we received? We've seen the national grid collapse a few times. But between the Zungeru hydropower plants coming online, are we going to see any interruptions in the transmission of power to Nigerians?
So Zungeru would not exactly cause direct interruptions. And I think, so in the past couple of weeks, we've probably seen, I think 6 or 4 grid collapses. But before then, we had actually celebrated close to 400 days of, no grid collapse. So it's really, in terms of grid collapses, it really comes from the transmission end of things and not exactly the generation plant. So this calls on us to continue to reinforce our transmission line, our transmission capacity. I don't know that Zungeru, I know I read a piece recently where the minister had made reference to the fact that we don't have like a reserve power. So that's spinning reserve that should kick in to help kind of stabilize the grid. I mean, I don't know how we would have reserve power when we're practically struggling to have available capacity of just 4,000 megawatts. So, and I don't know that Zungeru has come online to be that's not the plan for the plants to be some sort of spinning reserve power to stabilize the grid. That's not my understanding of as to why it has come online. So I think the one Zungeru being good, it cannot guarantee in terms of stopping grid collapses. That's purely a TCN thing. But I think one thing that is there is it can help get that cheaper, more reliable power. So no, we shouldn't see any disruption to our service because Zungeru came online. If not for anything, we're hopeful that it should actually, lead to that improved supply. So I don't think anybody should be bothered that when Zungeru is put on the grid, we're going to have issues.
Well, Mr. Ngoha, thank you very much for speaking with us this morning. Our guest on the conversation is Mr. Nnadozie Ngoha, the managing consultant at EMRC, who joined us to speak on the federal government transferring operations of the Zungeru hydroelectric power plant to concessionaires Penstock Limited.
Your window to Africa today. This is Africa in Perspective.
You're welcome back into the conversation. This morning, we speak on Africa in Perspective with Dr. Jimoh Muftau Oluwasegun, a lecturer in African history at the Federal University in Benin, Kebbi. Dr. Oluwasegun, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
To jump right into it, the African continent has seen quite a number of conflicts, not just in the 1960s when independence was granted to most African nations, but more recently we have seen conflicts that have either been started by civilian governments within African nations or by military elements within the nations that have sought to take power for themselves. More recently, we've seen Guinea see the postponement of a return to democracy, and it is one of the worrying trends that have taken over African nations. The question of whether Africa has to be concerned about the complete takeover of the continent's ruling bodies by military authorities has come to the fore again. Is there a source of concern for the African Union?
Good morning, listeners. Since the return of democracy, and what Kayode Fayemi described in one of his works as the fourth democratization of African continent, we thought with the return of democracy, Africa finally come to embrace liberal democracy. But the development on the continent have raised a fundamental question as the suitability of liberal democracy in the face of abject poverty. There is a nexus between material development on the continent, corruption, good governance, rule of law, and, of course, the unprecedented wave of military takeover. You take from Niger to Mali, what are the factors? The pull and push factors for this return of military is bad governance, corruption. Because you cannot have a popular and working democracy. The military always have this at the back of their mind, that they can only strike when there is a general discontent within the populace. You take Niger, for instance, the poverty level in Niger is almost 80%. In Mali, the same thing. These are the recipe for disaster. So it is about bad governance. It's about rising increase in poverty rates on the continent that attracted the military back into governance. So what we should be looking at is the suitability of liberal democracy to Africa. It is the rising cost of living, bad governance, corruption on the continent. So we must sit down as a people and look at what type of government do we want to practice. I am not saying liberal democracy is not good, but you can't have liberal democracy that encourages corruption on the continent, where somebody will loot the treasury, move to Paris, London, or United, and people are wallowing in poverty. The military are part of the general society. They are bound to react. That is just my take.
We've also seen comments from former Nigerian head of state and one of the founding fathers of the Economic Community of West African States, retired General Yakubu Gowon. He's been speaking recently and telling ECOWAS to lift the sanctions that were imposed on Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger Republic. And as we know, these three countries have their governments decided. Their government is headed by military juntas. Now, if the sanctions are lifted, is it in any way going to come across as, if you want, an approval of these military juntas by ECOWAS?
Well, the sanctions in the first place are externally induced. To me, the sanction should not be the first thing that ECOWAS should have taken. Because the man in Niger was brought up by the French, and the French were busy making the resources of Niger. So, from all indications, the military takeover in Niger was welcomed by the people. ECOWAS, you cannot cry more than the bereaved. ECOWAS is just a club, to use the word of Julius Malema.
ECOWAS is a flop. Do they call themselves to order? Is there any peer review mechanism in? You look at Niger, the man there, propped up by the French, poverty rate on the high side, same thing with Mali, same thing with Burkina Faso. For me, the sanctions should be lifted in the interest of the people. The people who of course, they are suffering collateral damage. But there are ways you can deter military coup on the continent without necessarily being, this harsh economic sanctions. Because the nations sanctioned on are bound to look for new allies. They are bound to take new initiative. If the care is not taken, ECOWAS will be balkanized, ECOWAS will be divided, and that might mark the beginning, the beginning of an end of ECOWAS. When you notice bad governance in certain countries, what did you do to address the situation? When you notice corruption, monumental corruption like we have in Nigeria in the last 15 or 10 years, what ECOWAS, what are the measures put in place? Not just ECOWAS, international community as well, because money laundering, corruption, and whatever, it's still within these international financial institutions. So when people react, you call it military takeover, they should be sanctioned. So civilians should be left to be looting their countries while people are suffering. I think ECOWAS have a kind of a rethink, engage the juntas, think for way forward, establish contact with them, and probably see how you can help them to democratize.
Thank you very much for speaking with us today. Dr. Jimoh Mufutau Oluwasegun is a lecturer in African history at the Federal University in Benin, KB, and he joined us to speak on ECOWAS, the rise of military juntas on the continent of Africa, and indeed what can be done to prevent the recurrence of military juntas taking over countries in Africa. You're still listening to Africa in Perspective. Up next, we have amazing facts, this time about Guinea. Do stay with us.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM.